a quick live video about a topic that I was thinking about while I was getting dressed. I've gotten my, I don't know, I guess it's not a New Year's resolution at this point, but my middle of the year resolution is when I'm thinking about something, instead of being like, I need to get on and make a video about that, I'm trying to, instead of worrying about everything being perfect, just get on and make the video on the topic that I was thinking about while straightening my hair. So, anyhow, here you go. One thing that I wanted to talk about today, and I will get on if you are here now, and I think it just says, like, I'm live, but I will get on and actually put a title on this video, and the title is going to be Common Art Yarn Fears Debunked. And the motivation on this is that as we are finishing up, I don't know, my current thing I'm talking about and I've been covering online has been small farm, small indie artist subscriptions, my subscriptions from my website, and that deal is coming to a close. There was a 50% off coupon. Anyhow, that's coming to a close on the 20th, which is I think like Monday, maybe. So I was gearing up for the next thing that I'm going to be marketing and talking about and having sales and exciting stuff for. And that's going to be my art yarn mini course. And I have, of course, tons of videos on here, millions of videos on here, but my courses are really for people that if there's a topic, and I mean, they're not expensive, so it's like not that serious, but basically, if you're really wanting to dive deeper into a specific topic, so you want things to go in a certain order, to have homework, to have specific lessons and specific topics covered, and especially something with yarn spinning, especially art yarn spinning, I feel like they're really skills that build on each other. And then within the sphere of art yarn, my who I consider to be the art yarn queen is my friend Ashley Martineau, who these braids actually came from. I'm very excited about how cool these are. She is her business, and she has a YouTube channel that you can find on here. Look up Ashley Martineau, and it's Nuvio, like Nouveau Riche, but it's spelled like her last name, which is super clever. She has a million art yarn videos on there, and so now you're probably like, well, Erin, if your friend has a million art yarn videos, why are you on here talking about you're gonna make some? Well, it's because we have different skill sets. And while, like I said, I do consider her my muse for art yarn, and she definitely, like I said, these are from her shop, and I just had to have them, and I'm excited about spinning these. I'm going to add some new content. So she spins, and I wouldn't even start to cover what it is. She does the larger weavings, the really cool, bigger form, textured tapestry kind of yarn, as well as also thinner yarn. One of the things I really enjoy doing, and probably a question that I get asked a lot, is kind of people like when they start spinning, they like the idea of spinning art yarns, but then they're kind of like, but what would I do with it? And that was where my entire, and you can still find it, it's in the pattern section of my website. The little pattern ebook, for lack of a better term, I think we called it, is beautiful. What do I make out of it? For patterns that deal with more unusual yarns. And so, what I wanted to cover in this little live was just kind of debunking some common, I feel like, concerns that people have that are either new to spinning or they have always just spun really fine yarns. Because one of my last videos, if you were watching these chronologically, was just one on how to spin thicker yarn, and it was answering a question for someone who always had spun thinner yarn, and she was wanting to move more into thicker yarns and more like arty yarns that way. So, um, I guess concern number one people usually have is, does it always have to be like, if, and this is why I have these for prop purposes, like if you look at something like this and you're just dying over, like, said, the colors and the textures, you may feel like the only yarn you could make out of this would have to be like really big, really like kind of stiffer, harder to use, more like weaving yarn. And while obviously this sort of lock slash roving combo would make absolutely gorgeous or larger scale yarn, you can also really break this sort of yarn down and spin textured yet still controllable or malleable, I think is the right word, yarns if you're more of a knitter. So I have examples. So this is my roving, like I said, I'm going to be doing some content that will be going in my little art yarn section and I'm going to use these braids because I love them, so I wanted an excuse to play around with them. But I'm going to be spinning these, so stay tuned. For, like I said, adding content to my art yarn course, and I'm going to be spinning these really fabulous textured braids, but in a more malleable sort of yarn. So that's going to be, but I have examples of other yarns. So this is a thick and thin, you can see beehive yarn, or flame ply. I think I heard it called that in a book, and it's because it looks like candle flame, where you've got kind of the little whoop, like for the candle flame, and then you can see the thread ply, the little kinks in there. So this is something that, as you see, it is very textured. I forget, I spun this a long time ago. This feels very springy. Honestly, this feels like it might be like baby doll wool. This is a very springy, or tunis, perhaps. Um, Not a fine fiber. So this was definitely a more unusual fiber that I spun from. And then I just embraced the texture of it with doing this real thick and thin. But as you can see, while it is larger, it is still very, easy to, like, you could definitely knit with this. Like, it can be squinched and balled up, and it could be used for weaving as well as knitting or crochet, while still giving you this really cool thick and thin twisty thread ply texture. So that's an example of flame ply using a thread. I also, let's see, this is the same idea, but with more traditional beehives. So instead of having like the longer, like whoops, like little whips of longer fiber, this one's actually got more of a traditional beehive. But, oh, hold on, there you go. It's hanging onto itself over here. This yarn would be, oh, it's really hanging onto itself over here. This yarn I think I'd been using for a weaving project, which I'll show you in a minute. But you can see it is also, and it's all over the place. But it is clearly very easy to work with. It is not stiff. It's got a great drape, which drape is kind of, if it was stiffer, like if I did this, it would still be wanting to kind of hang tight. Whereas you can see it's, definitely got good drape, which you would want to take into consideration for like knitting patterns. So that would make a lovely shawl. And what else do I have as an art yarn sort of thing? This is more, yeah, I did a lot of thread ply. I guess the rest of them are on patterns. So that takes me to tip number 2. This is just a single ply, thick and thin. So this is much more simple. Obviously, this would be great for knitting or crochet, but this is just a merino. But you could use something, and that's what I'm going to do, is more this way, but I'm going to draft it down. So the second thing people always want to know is like, well, what do I do with it? So that question being like, if I only have a certain amount of yarn of this like fabulous handspun art yarn, like what kind of project do I make from it? Well, you can either make a smaller entire thing out of it project. You could do something like this. I had a lot of fun with. I use this as an example a lot. This was some yarn that came from a fiber share box. So I didn't make this yarn, but it came from a fiber share box that someone spun. It's got these really big beehives, and I loved all the colors and textures together. So I made this big, giant, chunky scarf that I love in the winter. It's basically like a cowl. It's good for when it snows, and it is a loose knit item. So you can see the knitted texture in there. So you can add things together to get a cool texture and color combo. And then I would definitely recommend, and I have patterns like this on my website in the free pattern section, anything that has a looser knit, like a garter stitch or a drop stitch, is really going to be your friend if you're trying to, yeah, you can really see it there. This was my design. If you're trying to really show off the texture. But you can see this is still, and I love it in the winter, totally soft, totally squishy. It's not stiff or itchy or weird, so it's a very malleable project. Or you can use your art yarn as a section in another pattern. So this is commercial, actually bamboo yarn. It was very affordable. I bought one summer at a local yarn shop at the beach, and then I used this one skein of single ply thick and thin for the accent section for this shawl. And it's really pretty. Oh, hold on, there you go. That's really pretty. You can see my shawl. And so this is just one skein of the hand spun, and I let it be the colorful part, and then used it in with the neutral color. And like I said, they're totally different yarn textures. And so I just jumped in on this pattern and just really just kind of saw where it ended up. And you might not have thought that those would have worked well together, but you see they totally did. So, you know, don't be afraid to try new things. And that's a use of one skein in a much larger project. Let it be your highlight. And then same thing with this is technically a circle shawl, but I don't know, I've never really figured out a good way to, you're supposed to be able to wear it, supposed to be able to wear it this way, but honestly, I'm not very good at wearing shawls. So I've had this draped over a bench in my room, and I love it. This was a really pretty design. This was a FF Finch circle shawl. She has some really beautiful ones. But you've got two different types of more commercial yarn, and then this was a silk, a pure mulberry silk 2-ply. It was chunky. And I mean, I literally just continued the same pattern into the chunky silk on the edge, and it made this really, see it's big, this really pretty border, and I just love how this turned out. Like I said, I used this in decoration in my bedroom. So I think that was my 3 points. It was fear of all my yarn has to be really big and only used for weavings. I think was fear number 1, or fear number 1. And then fear number 2 being I don't know what to make out of it. And you know, if I just have one skein, so that was what we just talked about there. And then I don't know, my last thing is you don't have to just knit. I'm also coming out, my mom and I, last time she was here, we didn't make this one. My friend Brittany made this one, and I purchased it from her. Be Rit Fiber Arts. You can find her on Instagram. But Mom and I were making something like this because we wanted to film a beginning to end tutorial, and so that's going to be coming out too, so get excited about that. But you can see all the different, if you have smaller pieces of different types of art yarn. I don't have one of those big looms. I'm not a tapestry weaver by any means that way, but I love the idea of weaving, and so these little circle projects, and that's why Mom and I wanted to do the little tutorial. I've got to edit the videos that will be coming out. We wanted to do this because I thought it was such a great way to use, like I said, so if you fell in love with fiber like this, you could easily spin some yarn, and then also you could save the little locks, you know, you could save some of the textured pieces to actually tuck in, like you can see how Brittany did that here on a weaving. So you also don't have to just knit or crochet. You can, even if you're not a weaver, you don't have a big loom or even a small loom, you can easily use one of these embroidery hoops and some string. And like I said, I have to edit the videos, but Mom and I filmed a how-to video series on that, and I will have to edit that and figure out the best way to get it out to everybody. But we also have those. So anyhow, I think that's it. Oh, hold on. Now I'm finding more stuff I had laid out here. I think my other fear of spinning art yarn was how to have it accessible, like how to have it work on a wheel, being afraid that just larger yarn was going to get caught on a wheel. And I just wanted to make you aware, if you were newer to spinning, there are, even with smaller, this is a 4-ounce Spin Perfect bobbin, and you can see how it's got more room the way this curve is here. It's a thinner barrel, and then it's got extra room. So even on a very lightweight small bobbin, you could get more, granted not like a whole 4 ounces, but you could definitely get more art yarn type yarn to fit on different types of bobbins. Like I said, this is a Spin Perfect 4-ounce bobbin. They make them for other wheel brands, but mainly it was made by the same owner of SpinOlution, so obviously they work very well on SpinOlution wheels, and that's what this one is for. My Polywog. And also on the SpinOlution wheels, you can get any size from 4 ounce to like the biggest ones they have with these open hook orifice. So instead of having like a small little orifice tube that you're trying to get yarn through, here I'm going to use this as a demonstration again. The hook, you literally just, you can hook any width in this, and this goes on your flyer, so then you can see how that very easily can go through there. So that was my third fear, I guess, with art yarn, is not having the proper setup to be able to do it. There are definitely wheels on the market that you can get that can very easily accommodate and have options to spin different types of yarn.